Have you ever felt trapped by an invisible force inside you, quietly wrecking the very things you want most? Deeper love, real confidence, freedom from the same old cycles. That force isn't failure. It's self-sabotage disguised as protection, shielding wounds, unmet needs, and survival rules you outgrew long ago. Your biggest obstacle isn't out there. It's the mountain within you. Not something to fight or destroy, but the exact path you're meant to climb. Nature shows us how. Forest fires clear dead wood for new growth. Stars collapse before they ignite into supernovas. Your breakdowns, your anxiety, procrastination, toxic patterns, they're not endings. They're the precise moment before transformation. When you stop running from the discomfort and start listening, you uncover why the sabotage keeps showing up. You release what's been stuck, meet your real needs in ways that actually strengthen you, and step into a version of yourself that's finally equipped. Resilient, emotionally awake, aligned with the life waiting on the other side. The mountain isn't blocking your destiny. The mountain is your destiny. Climb it, and who you become in the process stays with you forever. Stay with me as we unpack the ideas that turn self-sabotage into true self-mastery. Chapter 1. Have you ever caught yourself doing the exact thing you swore you'd never do again? You finally get momentum, new job, healthy habits, a promising relationship, and then, almost like clockwork, you derail it. You ghost, you self-destruct, you freeze. And the worst part, you know exactly what you're doing, yet you can't seem to stop. That's not weakness. That's not you being broken. That's self-sabotage doing its job, protecting you from something your deeper mind still believes is dangerous. Self-sabotage isn't random chaos or proof you secretly hate yourself. On the surface, it looks like self-punishment, procrastination that costs you opportunities, picking fights in moments of closeness, numbing out with food, alcohol, scrolling, or work when things get good. But underneath, it's almost always a coping mechanism, a brilliant, unconscious strategy your mind created long ago to keep you safe when you didn't have better tools. The moment you feel that familiar pull to ruin something beautiful, pause and ask, what need is this behavior trying to meet? Safety? Control? Relief from shame? Avoidance of rejection or failure? Most self-sabotaging patterns were born from a time when you had to survive something overwhelming, big or small, and your nervous system decided, this is how we stay okay. Over years, those survival tactics hardened into habits. They worked once. They don't work anymore. But they keep running because no one ever told them the war is over. Here's the radical shift. Your self-sabotage is not the enemy. It's a signal, a flashing light pointing straight to an unmet need, an unprocessed emotion, or a part of you that still believes the old rules are the only rules. The real mountain isn't the external goal that feels out of reach. The mountain is the internal conflict between two versions of you. The conscious part that knows what you want, growth, love, freedom, success, and the unconscious part that's still gripping yesterday's safety blanket. That tension creates the resistance, the discomfort, the pain that makes change feel impossible. And that pain, it's not a sign you're failing. It's the exact place where transformation begins. Nature teaches us this over and over. Forest fires burn away the old to make room for new life. Stars collapse in on themselves before they explode into supernovas. Your breakdowns, your patterns, your resistance, they're not proof you're stuck. They're the prelude to becoming someone new. To cross to the other side, the work is deep and honest. Trace the behavior back to its origin. Pinpoint the moment, the feeling, the belief that first made this coping strategy feel necessary. Feel what was too big or too unsafe to feel back then. Let the emotions move instead of staying frozen inside you. Meet those original needs in ways that actually build you up. Connection instead of isolation. Self-compassion instead of shame. Courage instead of avoidance. Rebuild the story you tell about who you are. Stop identifying as the person who always ruins things. Start identifying as the person who is learning how to thrive. Grow the emotional muscles, resilience, self-awareness, regulation, so the old patterns lose their power. This isn't about forcing yourself into a new personality. It's about mourning the version of you that had to survive the hard way and stepping into the version that's finally equipped to live the way you've always wanted. Because the gap between where you are and where you dream of being isn't a lack of discipline or talent. It's the distance between who you've had to be to stay safe and who you're ready to become to truly live. The mountain isn't blocking your path. The mountain is your path. And every step you take up it, every time you choose to feel the discomfort instead of running from it, makes you stronger, clearer, more whole. The life on the other side isn't reserved for people who never struggle. It's reserved for the people brave enough to face the struggle inside them and keep climbing anyway. Stay with me. We're going deeper into how to turn that inner resistance into unstoppable momentum. Chapter 2. There's no such thing as self-sabotage. Have you ever wondered why the moment things start going really well, something inside you flips a switch? You finally land the opportunity you've been chasing, or your relationship feels secure and loving, or you're making real progress on your goals. And suddenly you're overwhelmed with doubt, picking fights, procrastinating harder than ever, or finding ways to quietly undermine it all. It feels like you're sabotaging yourself on purpose. But what if that's not what's happening at all? The core idea here flips everything. There's no such thing as self-sabotage. Not in the way we usually think of it, as masochism, laziness, or proof you're your own worst enemy. What we call self-sabotage is actually your mind's way of protecting you. It's a subconscious strategy to keep you from crossing an invisible line you didn't even know you drew. When you build habits that push your life forward, discipline, consistency, vulnerability, you call them skills. But when the exact same nervous system kicks in to pull you back, perfectionism, avoidance, emotional shutdown, attachment to drama, or chasing things that don't really matter, you label it sabotage. The behavior is the same, only the outcome changes how we name it. Your mind has an upper limit on how much happiness, success, love, or peace it believes you're allowed. When you approach that ceiling, alarm bells go off. The discomfort isn't random. It's your unconscious saying, "This feels too good. Something bad is coming. Better pull back now." So you create resistance. You overthink until you paralyze yourself. You criticize until nothing feels good enough. You cling to old pain because it's familiar. Or you uproot your life the second it stabilizes. All of it keeps you safely below that line. These patterns aren't proof you're broken. They're evidence of protection. They once helped you survive. Maybe by keeping expectations low so disappointment hurt less, or by avoiding vulnerability so rejection couldn't touch you, or by staying busy so you never had to face what's really going on inside. But protection at all costs eventually becomes prison. The very mechanisms that once kept you safe now keep you small. The shift starts when you stop judging the behaviors and start asking, what is this trying to protect me from? What core commitment am I honoring right now? A core commitment might be, I must always be in control, or I can't let anyone get too close, or I have to prove I'm worthy by suffering. Once you see the deeper intention, safety, belonging, avoiding pain, the sabotage loses its power. It's no longer a mysterious enemy. It's a misguided guardian. From there, the real work begins, gently updating those old commitments. You teach your system that good things can last, that you can handle discomfort without running, that success doesn't always come with collapse. You practice choosing the forward action even when the feeling screams, no. You disconnect action from emotion because waiting to feel ready is one of the biggest traps. Readiness follows action, not the other way around. When you stop seeing your resistance as betrayal and start seeing it as information, everything changes. You stop fighting yourself. You start guiding yourself. You realize the upper limit isn't fixed, it's expandable. The more you lean into the discomfort of growth instead of fleeing it, the higher that ceiling rises. This isn't about becoming perfect or never feeling afraid again. It's about recognizing that what you've called self-sabotage is actually your mind doing its best with outdated tools. And now, you're ready to upgrade them. The mountain isn't punishing you. It's inviting you to see that the resistance you feel isn't the end. It's the beginning of real freedom. Stay with me as we keep climbing. The next layer is even more powerful. Chapter 3. Building a new future means letting go of your old one. Have you ever noticed how tightly you hold on to things that hurt you? Old stories about who you are, old versions of relationships, old ways of thinking, even when you know they're keeping you stuck. You tell yourself, this time will be different, or I can't let go because it's all I've known. But deep down, part of you is terrified of the emptiness that might come if you finally release it. The hardest truth about real change is this. Building something new requires letting the old die. Not in a dramatic, overnight way, but in quiet, repeated acts of surrender. You can't carry yesterday's identity into tomorrow's life and expect it to fit. The version of you that survived the pain, the fear, the chaos. It did its job. It got you here. But it isn't equipped to take you further. Your mountain isn't just the obstacle in front of you. It's also the version of yourself you've outgrown standing at the base, refusing to move. That version clings to familiar suffering because suffering is predictable. It knows the rules. Stay small to stay safe. Avoid vulnerability to avoid rejection. Punish yourself to prove you're good enough. Repeat the same patterns so you never have to face the unknown. Letting go doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means grieving it. It means mourning the younger self who believed they had to earn love, who thought worth came from struggle, who learned to armor up instead of open up. Grief is the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. Skip it, and you stay tethered to the old identity. Feel it fully, and you finally get to lay that identity down. This is where most people turn back. The discomfort of shedding the old self feels worse than staying the same, because at least the pain is familiar, but staying the same guarantees more of the same. Letting go opens the door to something else, possibility. The process looks like this. First, you stop feeding the old story. You catch yourself when you start narrating, "I'm the person who always ruins things," or "I'm not the kind of person who gets to have this," and you interrupt it. Not with toxic positivity, but with honesty. That's what I used to believe. It helped me survive then. It doesn't serve me now. Second, you create space for the new. You act in ways the old you wouldn't. Small, consistent acts of courage. You show up even when you don't feel ready. You choose kindness toward yourself instead of criticism. You let people see the real you instead of the polished mask. Each time you do this, you're voting for the future self. Third, you stop romanticizing the past. The old comfort wasn't comfort. It was familiarity. The old pain wasn't noble. It was unnecessary. When nostalgia hits, you remind yourself, "I don't miss the situation. I miss the version of me that hadn't yet learned I could choose differently." This letting go phase feels like loss because it is loss, but it's also liberation. Every time you release an old belief, an old habit, an old version of how you think things should be, you reclaim energy that was tied up in maintaining the illusion. That energy becomes fuel for the climb. The new future doesn't arrive because you finally deserve it. It arrives because you stop defending against it. You stop proving why you can't have it. You stop hiding from the person you're capable of becoming. Your mountain asks for one thing above all: willingness to become unrecognizable to the version of you that arrived at the base. Not because that version was wrong, but because it was temporary. It was the cocoon. Now it's time to emerge. The life waiting on the other side isn't better because it's perfect. It's better because it's yours, built by someone brave enough to grieve, release, and step forward anyway. Chapter 4. Your triggers are your teachers. Have you ever had one small thing set you off completely? A casual comment that sends you spiraling into anger, a text that goes unanswered that makes you feel worthless, or a moment of success that suddenly floods you with anxiety instead of joy. You react bigger than the situation calls for, and later you wonder, why did that hit me so hard? That reaction isn't random. It's a trigger, and triggers are not here to ruin your day. They're here to show you exactly where the wound still lives. Your triggers are the fastest, most honest teachers you'll ever have. They don't lie. They don't sugarcoat. When something outside of you touches an old, unhealed part inside, the emotional response is instant and intense because it's not just about the present moment. It's about every moment that came before it that felt the same. The body remembers. The nervous system remembers. And when a trigger lands, it's replaying an ancient alarm. This feels like danger. Protect yourself now. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid triggers or control the people and situations that cause them. They think peace comes from never being triggered again. But real peace comes from something far more powerful. Learning what the trigger is pointing to. Every time you feel that disproportionate rush of emotion, rage, shame, fear, abandonment, unworthiness, pause and ask, what old story is this activating? What past experience taught me that this feeling means I'm unsafe, unloved, or not enough? The trigger isn't the problem. It's the flashlight shining directly on the problem you've been carrying in the dark. The moment you stop fighting the feeling and start listening to it, the trigger loses its power to hijack you. You realize the intensity isn't about the person in front of you or the situation right now. It's about the younger part of you that never got to feel safe, seen or soothed when something similar happened before. That part is still waiting for resolution. Healing doesn't mean the trigger disappears forever. It means your response to it changes. Instead of exploding, shutting down, or running, you learn to breathe through it. You learn to say, I feel this old pain showing up, and I'm going to take care of it right now. You give yourself the comfort, the validation, or the boundary that was missing back then. Each time you do that, you rewire the alarm system. The trigger still fires, but it no longer controls the whole house. This is the opposite of what most people do. We judge ourselves for being too sensitive. We blame others for pushing our buttons. Or we numb out so we never have to feel it. But every time you avoid the trigger, you also avoid the healing. You keep the wound alive, quietly bleeding underneath everything else. Your triggers are not proof you're broken. They're proof you're human, and more importantly, they're proof there's still growth available. They show you the exact places where love, safety, and trust were interrupted, and they give you the chance to go back and finish the conversation with compassion instead of fear. The deeper you're willing to go into what the trigger is revealing, the freer you become. Not because life stops throwing things at you, but because you stop being thrown by them. You start responding from who you are becoming instead of reacting from who you had to be to survive. The mountain doesn't get smaller when you face your triggers. You get bigger, stronger, more present, more capable of holding the full range of what it means to be alive, without letting the past dictate your future. The next layer of the climb is even more liberating. We keep going. Chapter 5. How your past has created your present and how to rewrite it. Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a perfectly good day. Things are calm, you're making progress, maybe even feeling a flicker of hope. And then one small thing happens. A memory surfaces. A familiar tightness grips your chest, or an old belief whispers, "You don't deserve this." Suddenly, you're not in the present anymore. You're back there, reliving a moment, a season, or a string of moments when the world taught you that safety means shrinking, that love is conditional, that success always comes with a hidden cost. That's not weakness. That's your past still living inside your nervous system. The patterns you hate most, the procrastination, the people-pleasing, the emotional shutdown, the constant second-guessing, aren't character flaws. They are survival adaptations. They were the best strategies your younger self could come up with when the world felt unsafe, unpredictable, or unloving. Maybe you learned that being too much got you rejected, so you learned to disappear. Maybe showing need got you ignored or punished, so you learned to need nothing. Maybe failure once felt catastrophic, so you learned to never fully try. These weren't choices you made as an adult with full awareness. They were instincts shaped in real time to keep you protected. The problem is, those instincts don't update themselves. They keep running the same old program even when the environment has changed, even when you're safe now, even when you're capable now, even when the relationship is healthy, the opportunity is real, the life is waiting. Your system still scans for threat using yesterday's map, and when it finds even a faint echo of the old danger, it pulls the emergency brake. That's why change feels so exhausting. You're not just fighting new habits. You're fighting an entire internal history that believes letting go of the old ways means letting go of survival itself. The way forward isn't to hate that history or pretend it didn't happen. It's to honor it, Thank it for getting you this far, and then gently show it that the threat level has changed. You do that by rewriting the story, not with affirmations alone, but with evidence. Every time you choose the scary but aligned action instead of the safe but limiting one, you give your nervous system new data. We can feel this fear and still be okay. Every time you stay present with a difficult emotion instead of numbing or running, you teach your body, we can feel big feelings and not die. Every time you set a boundary, speak your truth, or rest without guilt, you prove the rules have shifted. We're allowed to take up space now. This rewriting happens slowly, through repetition and compassion. You don't erase the past, you integrate it. You stop letting it run the show unconsciously and start holding it consciously. You become the adult in the room who can look at that scared younger part and say, I see why you learned to do this. Thank you, but I've got us now. We're going to try something different. The most powerful shift is realizing that your past doesn't have to dictate your future unless you keep reenacting it. You break the cycle the moment you stop recreating the same emotional conditions that created the original pain. You stop abandoning yourself to prove you're worthy of love. You stop sabotaging success to avoid the terror of visibility. You stop clinging to chaos because stillness feels unfamiliar. Each time you choose differently, you carve a new neural pathway. One that says, safety can look like expansion, not just contraction. Your present is not a punishment from the past. It's a reflection of what your system still believes is true. Change the belief, change the reflection. Not by forcing positivity, but by creating experiences that contradict the old story. Small, consistent, brave experiences that accumulate until the new reality feels more trustworthy than the old one. The mountain you're climbing isn't just about reaching the top. It's about carrying less of yesterday with you every step. When you finally reach the other side, it won't be because the past disappeared. It'll be because you grew bigger than it. You didn't erase the child who learned to protect herself. You brought her with you and showed her she's safe to come out now. That's when the real freedom begins, not when the triggers vanish, but when they no longer define who you are or what you're allowed to have. We keep climbing. The view is worth every hard step. Chapter 6. The Invisible Boundary. How your comfort zone becomes your cage. Have you ever felt an almost physical resistance the moment you try to step into something bigger? More visibility, more vulnerability, more love, more success? It's not just nerves. It's a wall. Not built of brick or stone, but of thoughts, memories, and old promises to yourself that say, this far and no further. That wall is your comfort zone. And while it once felt like the safest place in the world, it has quietly become the most dangerous one, because staying inside it guarantees you never become who you're capable of being. The comfort zone isn't about physical safety alone. It's emotional territory. It's the range of feelings, identities, and experiences your nervous system has labeled known and survivable. Anything outside that range, even if it's objectively good, triggers the same ancient alarm as real danger. Your body doesn't distinguish between I might fail and feel humiliated and I might be physically harmed. To your survival wiring, both register as threats to be avoided at all costs. That's why growth feels so uncomfortable. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're literally stepping outside the only version of reality your system has practiced surviving. The moment you try to speak up, set a boundary, pursue a dream, or let someone truly close, the alarms go off, heart racing, thoughts spiraling, urge to retreat. And most people retreat, not because they're weak, but because retreat is what has always restored calm. Retreat is what has always meant safety. But here's the brutal truth. The comfort zone expands only when you stay in the discomfort long enough for your system to realize the new territory isn't lethal. You don't expand it by thinking your way out of fear. You expand it by acting your way through fear again and again, until the new normal feels less threatening than the old one. The invisible boundary shows up in subtle ways. You get close to a breakthrough and suddenly crave distraction. Endless scrolling, busy work, picking fights, creating drama, or falling back into familiar self-sabotage. These aren't random slips. They're your system's attempt to restore the familiar emotional baseline. It would rather keep you small and anxious, which it knows how to handle, than risk the unknown of being bigger, loved, successful, or truly seen. Breaking through requires something radical, tolerance for the in-between, the messy, uncertain space where the old identity is dying, but the new one hasn't fully arrived. Most people abandon ship here because it feels like drowning. But that discomfort is not proof you're failing. It's proof you're changing. It's the exact friction that forges new neural pathways, new beliefs, new capacity. You cross the boundary the same way mountains are climbed. One deliberate step at a time. You choose the action that scares you most. Sending the email, having the conversation, showing up as the version of yourself you've been hiding. And then you stay. You breathe through the panic instead of running from it. You remind yourself, this feeling is temporary. This feeling is not fact. This feeling means I'm growing, not dying. Each time you do this, the comfort zone stretches. The alarms get quieter. The new territory starts to feel like home. What once felt impossible becomes ordinary. What once felt threatening becomes neutral. And slowly, the cage you once lived in becomes something you can look back on with gratitude instead of imprisonment. Your mountain doesn't ask you to destroy your comfort zone. It asks you to outgrow it, to treat it like a childhood blanket. Soft, familiar, useful once, but no longer big enough to cover who you are becoming. When you finally step past that invisible line and keep walking, you don't just reach a new place. You become someone who no longer needs the old boundaries to feel safe. You become someone who trusts their own capacity to handle whatever comes next. That's the moment freedom stops being a concept and starts being your reality. The climb continues. Chapter 7. Building Emotional Mastery. The foundation of real change. Have you ever felt like your emotions are driving the car while you're just along for the ride? One minute you're calm and focused, the next you're flooded with anger, shame, fear, or numbness that seems to come out of nowhere. You react in ways you later regret, or you shut down completely and then spend hours or days trying to recover. You tell yourself you're too emotional or not emotional enough. But the truth is simpler and more powerful. You haven't yet learned how to be with your emotions without letting them run your life. Emotional mastery isn't about never feeling strongly again. It's about becoming the container that can hold whatever arises, without exploding outward, collapsing inward, or running away. Most people live in one of two extremes, either drowning in their feelings or completely disconnected from them. Both keep you stuck. The first keeps you reactive. The second keeps you numb. Real change lives in the middle ground, where you can feel the full intensity of what's happening inside you and still choose your next move. Your emotions are not the problem. They are messengers. Every feeling you have is trying to tell you something important. A need that's unmet, a boundary that's been crossed, a value that's been violated, a fear that's been activated, or a grief that's asking to be witnessed. When you ignore, judge, suppress, or over-identify with them, those messages don't disappear. They just get louder in the background until they finally hijack you. The reason so many people stay trapped in the same cycles isn't lack of willpower or insight. It's lack of emotional tolerance. We've never been taught how to sit with discomfort long enough for it to reveal what it's really about. Instead, we've learned quick fixes: distraction, criticism, control, people-pleasing, perfectionism, substances, or endless analysis. All of these give temporary relief but keep the root untouched. Building emotional mastery starts with one radical choice: to stop treating your feelings as enemies or truths that must be obeyed, and start treating them as data. When anger surges, you pause and ask, what is this protecting? When shame floods in, you ask, what old story is this replaying? When fear tightens your chest, you ask, what am I being asked to protect or release? You don't have to answer perfectly right away. You just have to stay present long enough to hear the whisper underneath the scream. This presence changes everything. The moment you stop fighting the emotion, it stops needing to fight for your attention. It begins to soften, to move, to show you the next right action. You realize you can feel rage and still speak calmly. You can feel heartbreak and still keep moving forward. You can feel terror and still take the step that scares you most. That is freedom, not the absence of feeling, but the ability to feel without being ruled by it. The practice is simple but not easy. You start small. When a difficult feeling arises, you name it without judgment. This is anxiety showing up. You breathe into it instead of tightening around it. You give it space instead of rushing to fix it. You ask what it needs instead of assuming you already know. Over time, this builds a new muscle, the ability to witness yourself in real time without abandoning yourself. As that muscle strengthens, something profound happens. Triggers lose their grip. Old patterns lose their momentum. You stop needing external things, people, achievements, validation, to regulate your inner world. You become your own safe place, and when you're no longer at war with your emotions, you stop recreating situations that force them to scream. Your mountain doesn't require you to become emotionless. It requires you to become emotionally literate. Someone who can read the language of feeling, respond with wisdom instead of reflex, and use that information to build a life that actually feels good to live in. When you master your emotions, you don't just survive the climb. You start to enjoy it. You move through resistance with curiosity instead of dread. You meet challenges with presence instead of panic. You arrive at the top not as someone who conquered their feelings, but as someone who finally learned to walk with them as allies. The path keeps unfolding,